Do you know, somewhere out there, right now, a captain is sitting in his chair, charts spread across the table in front of him, coffee going cold, his crew 20, maybe 30 men waiting for an order that hasn't come. They've been waiting for days. He's not waiting because of engine trouble. He's not waiting because of weather. He's waiting because 20 miles ahead of him lies a stretch of water that has become arguably the most dangerous passage on Earth. And no one, not his company, not his insurer, not the naval attaché who briefed him 3 days ago, can tell him with certainty that his ship will make it through.
Welcome to History Uncovered, where the past refuses to stay buried.
Geography doesn't care about politics. It doesn't care about treaties, sanctions, or naval supremacy. It just exists. And sometimes, geography creates bottlenecks so severe that they become quite literally matters of life and death for the global economy. The Strait of Hormuz is one of those places. At its narrowest, this waterway measures roughly 21 miles across, a distance you could drive in less than 20 minutes. And yet, through that impossibly thin passage flows approximately 1/5 of all the oil traded on Earth every day. Hundreds of vessels, millions of barrels, tankers heading to Japan, LNG carriers bound for South Korea, crude shipments destined for European refineries, all of it funneled through this single point. There is no good alternative. There are alternatives around the southern tip of Africa, through pipelines that carry a fraction of the capacity, but they are slower, more expensive, and nowhere near sufficient to replace what moves through Hormuz on a normal day. This isn't a vulnerability the world stumbled into accidentally. It's been known for decades, and Iran has spent decades thinking about exactly how to exploit it. Tehran's strategy has never required matching the United States militarily. It doesn't need aircraft carriers. It doesn't need a blue water navy. All it has ever needed, is the credible ability to make the strait dangerous enough that the world hesitates. And right now, that strategy is working.
Modern warfare has a dimension that rarely gets discussed on military analysis channels. It operates not in the strait itself, but in the boardrooms of shipping companies in Athens and Singapore, in the underwriting floors of marine insurance giants in London, in the inbox of every fleet manager who wakes up every morning and has to decide, do we send the ship today? Because here is the uncomfortable mathematical reality of what Iran is doing. A successful strike on a single commercial vessel, even a minor one, triggers a cascade. Insurance premiums spike within hours. Shipping companies issue internal advisories. Captains request updated risk assessments. Delays compound. And oil that was supposed to arrive somewhere doesn't. You don't need to sink a fleet to destabilize a trade corridor. You just need the threat to feel real enough that rational, profit-driven businesses make the rational, profit-driven decision to wait. Iran understands this better than most analysts give it credit for. It isn't trying to win a war with the United States. It's trying to make the strait too expensive to use, and then leverage that economic pain at the negotiating table. That's the strategic context for everything that's happening right now. This isn't just a military campaign. It's a battle over perception, over confidence, over whether the world's shipping industry truly believes, that this waterway is safe again. And that is a far harder thing to restore than a destroyed radar installation.
Among the aircraft now operating over the Persian Gulf, one rarely makes the front page. It doesn't have the sleek, angular silhouette of a stealth fighter. It doesn't carry the most bombs or fly the fastest. But ask any air defense commander in the world which aircraft they fear most, and many will give you the same answer: the EA-18G Growler. To understand why, you have to think about warfare differently. Every military force on Earth depends on one thing above everything else: information. Where is the enemy? How fast are they moving? What are they targeting? That information travels as signals, invisible electromagnetic waves, bouncing off objects, returning data, carrying commands, radar pulses scanning the horizon, radio transmissions coordinating troop movements, missile guidance frequencies locking onto targets. This invisible architecture, this web of signals, is the true nervous system of any modern military force. And the Growler was built with one primary purpose: to find that nervous system and destroy it. The aircraft carries some of the most sophisticated passive listening equipment ever installed on a combat platform. It doesn't need to transmit anything to begin its mission. It simply listens. Every radar installation along the Iranian coastline that powers up even briefly emits a signal. That signal has a frequency, a pulse rate, a power signature. Together, those characteristics are as unique as a fingerprint. The Growler collects that fingerprint from a distance safe enough to avoid detection. It doesn't reveal its own position. It simply catalogs, maps, builds a picture. Radar station here, mobile launcher network here, communications relay here, and then when the targeting picture is complete, it acts. The first option is electronic jamming. The Growler's onboard transmitters flood the target's operating frequency with interference so powerful that the radar operators lose the ability to distinguish real contacts from fabricated ones. Imagine looking at a radar screen where a moment ago you had a clear picture of everything within 200 miles. Now you have 50 phantom ships, or nothing at all. In that moment of confusion, every weapon system that depended on that radar, missiles, artillery, fast attack boats, goes partially blind. But jamming is only one option. If the radar continues to operate, if the operators decide to push through the interference, the Growler carries an answer for that too. The AGM-88 high-speed anti-radiation missile, a weapon that homes in on radar emissions the way a heat-seeking missile homes in on jet exhaust. Here is what makes this weapon genuinely unsettling from a defender's perspective. The moment you power up your radar, you've given the missile a target. And if you panic and shut it down, hoping the missile will lose lock and miss, it won't. Modern anti-radiation missiles have memory. They know where the signal originated. They continue tracking the last known position even after the source goes silent. You can turn off your radar. You cannot untransmit the signal that already left it. This combination, passive surveillance, active jamming, and precision anti-radiation strikes, makes the Growler something that transcends the traditional category of fighter jet. It is, more accurately, a system designed to surgically remove an opponent's ability to see, communicate, and coordinate. In a place like the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran's entire threat model depends on radar-guided weapons and coordinated fast-boat attacks, that capability is not just useful, it is potentially decisive.
But there is a gap between blinding an enemy and defeating one. Electronic warfare creates windows. Someone still has to walk through them. That is precisely the role of the USS Tripoli, and its arrival in the region signals a meaningful shift in how American commanders are thinking about this campaign. The Tripoli is not a supercarrier. It doesn't have the flight deck space or the aviation wing of a Nimitz or a Ford, but what it lacks in size, it compensates for in flexibility. And in environments like the Strait of Hormuz, flexibility may matter more than scale. Operating from its flight deck, the F-35B, the short takeoff vertical landing variant of the most capable strike fighter currently in service. These aircraft are not just weapons platforms. They are, in many ways, airborne computers, flying sensor nodes that collect, process, and share battlefield intelligence at a speed no human analyst could match. Their onboard systems can detect radar emissions, track moving targets, identify threat signatures, and relay all of that data in real time to ships, submarines, and other aircraft in the area. Where the Growler disables the enemy's picture, the F-35B builds ours. The Tripoli also carries the MV-22 Osprey, an aircraft that still looks like it shouldn't be possible. A machine that lifts off vertically like a helicopter, then tilts its rotors forward and flies like a turboprop airplane at speeds a traditional helicopter could never match. What that gives commanders is reach, the ability to insert a small force onto a contested coastline without needing a port, without needing a runway, and to extract them just as quickly if the situation deteriorates. And aboard the Tripoli, roughly 2,000 Marines from an expeditionary unit are ready to execute exactly those kinds of missions: coastal raids, security operations, rapid response to
emerging threats. Their presence does not mean an invasion is being planned, but it means one could happen with speed if a specific target justified it. In military doctrine, the line between deterrence and capability is deliberately blurred. The enemy doesn't know which option you're choosing, and that uncertainty costs them planning cycles they can't afford. What's unfolding over the Strait of Hormuz right now is not a series of isolated strikes. It is a system, a coordinated cycle of detection, disruption, destruction, and observation running continuously across multiple platforms around the clock. It begins with the sensors, surveillance drones operating at altitude, quiet, patient, invisible to most radar systems, scan the Iranian coastline continuously. They photograph vehicle movements, they log signal activity, they flag anomalies. When something new appears, a radar coming online, a launcher relocating, a fast attack boat leaving harbor, that information enters the system immediately. The Growler then moves to characterize the threat. What type of radar is this? What frequency? Is it linked to a missile battery? What's its effective range? That analysis takes minutes, sometimes seconds. Once characterized, the decision is made. Jam it, strike it, or continue monitoring. If the decision is to strike, a stealth platform, often an F-35, is already being positioned. Guided by the Growler's targeting data, it moves into range without triggering the very radar it's about to destroy. The strike is precise, deliberate, often invisible from the ground until it's already over. No warning, no second chance to relocate, and then, immediately, observation begins again. Did another launcher just go active 2 kilometers away? Is there an emergency communication spike from that location? Has a fast attack boat been scrambled from a nearby harbor? The loop closes, and then it starts again. This is what separates modern electronic warfare campaigns from the blunt force air campaigns of previous generations. It is not about striking the same target over and over until it's gone. It is about making the entire act of operating, powering a radar, moving a launcher, sending a transmission so dangerous that defenders begin to hesitate before they do any of it. And hesitation in a fast-moving naval engagement is often fatal. It would be a mistake, a significant one, to look at American military capability in this region and conclude that the outcome is inevitable, because Iran, despite weeks of sustained pressure, has not been disarmed. Fast attack craft remain scattered across dozens of coastal inlets along the Iranian shore. These boats are not sophisticated. They don't need to be. Armed with rockets or short-range anti-ship missiles, they can emerge from a harbor, accelerate to attack speed, launch, and disappear back into the coastal maze, all in less time than a response can be organized. Against a convoy of tankers moving slowly through a narrow channel, that is a serious threat. Mobile missile launchers present a different kind of challenge. Many of these systems are mounted on standard-looking trucks. They can move between firing positions quickly. They can hide among civilian infrastructure, near warehouses, under highway overpasses, in agricultural areas, in ways that complicate targeting decisions enormously. Destroying one of these isn't just a technical problem. It is a legal and moral one. And beneath the water, a threat that receives almost no media coverage: naval mines. One of the oldest weapons in military history, and still one of the most effective for blocking a narrow shipping lane. A mine doesn't need guidance. It doesn't need a radar. It doesn't need a crew. It just needs to be there, invisible on the seabed, until a hull passes over it. Detecting and neutralizing mines require specialized vessels, trained divers, and remotely operated vehicles operating methodically across every possible transit route. It is slow, painstaking, dangerous work, and the threat can be reconstituted faster than it can be cleared. Finally, Iran's command and control networks. These have been targeted. Some have been damaged or destroyed, but redundant communication systems, underground facilities, and the sheer geographic depth of the Iranian coastline mean that coordination hasn't been eliminated, only complicated. A single radio transmission, a visual sighting from a hilltop observer, a brief radar ping from a hidden installation, any of these can trigger a missile launch or direct a fast attack boat toward a target. The nervous system has been damaged. It has not been severed.
Here is the thing that no aircraft, no missile, and no electronic warfare system can directly solve: human confidence. The Strait of Hormuz will not truly reopen when the last Iranian radar is destroyed. It will reopen when the captain in his darkened bridge decides that the risk is acceptable, when the insurance underwriter in London reduces the war risk premium back to normal levels, when the shipping company CEO stops calling his legal team and starts calling his port scheduler. That moment, that collective, distributed decision made by thousands of individuals across the global maritime industry is the real objective of this campaign. Every radar destroyed contributes to it. Every week of successful escort operations contributes to it. Every day that passes without a successful Iranian strike contributes to it. But it accumulates slowly, and it can be erased quickly. One successful attack, one tanker damaged, one crew evacuated. That single event, broadcast across every maritime news channel within minutes, can undo weeks of painstaking progress. The insurance market responds in hours. The captains respond in days. The traffic in the strait responds in weeks. This is why the campaign cannot stop, why the patrols continue even when no immediate threat is visible, why the growlers keep flying even on quiet nights, why the Marines remain ready even when no raid is being planned. Deterrence is not a destination. It is a continuous performance, and the audience, tanker captains, insurers, energy markets, is watching every single day.
Wars fought in headlines tend to end in headlines, but the fight for the Strait of Hormuz is not that kind of war. There will be no surrender ceremony, no victory parade, no single moment where someone declares it won. Instead, it will be decided in increments, radar by radar, launcher by launcher, week by week, until the balance of risk tips, until the confidence of the world shipping industry is restored, until oil flows freely again through that impossible narrow channel between two coastlines that have been in conflict for longer than most nations have existed. The men and women flying those growlers, maintaining those F-35s, sailing aboard the Tripoli, they understand something that rarely gets communicated in news coverage. The hardest part of this mission is not the technology, it is the patience, the willingness to fight an invisible war in an invisible spectrum for an outcome that the world will take for granted the moment it arrives. That is what is happening right now in one of the most consequential and least understood military campaigns of our time. Not a war of conquest, not a war of ideology, a war for the simple, fragile ability of ships to move through a narrow corridor of water, and the outcome will determine, quietly, invisibly, whether the global economy keeps its heartbeat.
If this kind of in-depth strategic breakdown is what you come here for, subscribe. We don't cover the headlines, we cover what's behind them. And drop a comment. Do you think the current U.S. approach can actually reopen Hormuz without a direct confrontation? Or is this a campaign that ends at the negotiating table, not the battlefield? I read every comment. See you in the next one.